Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Welcome to the Daily Cash Flow. My name's George Robson.
Hey, George. Peter.
Peter, if you're starting out in multifamily now with no assets, no credit, just starting from scratch, would you do it differently than you did 30 years ago?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it'd be exactly the same. I mean, if you have nothing, you got nothing to lose. Right. So your behavior inherently is you're hungry, you're aggressive, you're tactful, you're smart, you're calculated. You got to be all those things. You have nothing, right? You're just starting out, you said. So, you got to preserve your FICO score up to the point. You want to have a good FICO score, because without a good FICO score, no one's going to talk to you. I say no one, I mean a bank.
You said you had a cosigner when you first started.
Yeah, man, I had a cosigner. I mean, I didn't know anything. It was my first deal. There was a 6-family down in Washington, D.C. My plan was to buy the 6-family, move into one unit, rent out the other 5. I figured it was close to the campus, and I'd get other students to take units, and it would work out, and that's generally what happened. But I went to go buy it. I had minimal credit. I had not a whole lot of money. I needed a cosigner. So you're going to have to dig those things up. You're going to have to find those resources and tap into them. Cosigners can be friends, family, parents, business people, teachers. I mean, I was about to ask my real estate professor if he'd cosign. I didn't, but he was on the list.
That makes sense.
There's people that you have access to in your immediate world, whether you know it or not. You got to start there. So I'd be tapping into resources. I'd be hungry, man, hungry as fuck. That hunger is really going to drive so much for not just your first deal, but for the rest of your life. You got to assume the role. And I'm not saying fake it till you make it, because I'm not a fan of fake it till you make it. But I'm talking about assuming the role. So what I did was I picked up the phone and I called around to brokers. I said, hey, this is Peter Siegel. I'm a real estate investor. Now, I hadn't invested in one thing, but if I called them and said, hey, my name's Peter, I'm thinking about maybe buying something, and maybe, I don't know, but my credit isn't good, but can I meet you and can you show me 5 things that you have? They're gonna hang up the phone. They're not gonna spend time with me because I sound like an idiot. Yeah. So, I have to assume the role, and the role is of an investor. And when investors call around, they're saying, hey, I'm an investor. I want to meet you 2 o'clock on Thursday or 1 o'clock on Friday. I want to see these 3 properties. Let's make it happen.
How did you walk that line of when you didn't know something to not just fake it till you make it, but to, honestly be transparent? I
imagined what successful people in those shoes, how they'd behave, and I just started behaving like that. Yeah. I put on a suit or a sport coat, and I tried to look professional, and I probably failed at that a lot when I was younger, because I was young and I was a kid, and I looked like a young kid, and probably looked and smelt and felt like I was green and didn't know what I was doing. But you got to string all those beads together, man. And if you're starting out, assume the role. Like when I say assume the role, it's a lot like visualize the run. Imagine the success. Imagine that conversation that occurs when you have to pick up the phone and speak to someone. Imagine how you have to look or sound in order to convince someone that you're for real and you're not going to be wasting their time. Sound like that. Right. Be like that. And I was terrified of not sounding right or looking right. I was terrified of being able to get sniffed out so fast that I couldn't get an appointment with anybody. So I was really cognizant and really aware of how I had to sound and act and look and behave in order to get from first base to second base to third. And, that's what it is. It's stringing a lot of little bits and pieces and a lot of little wins together until you round those bases and you can have a real win. So I think young people starting off today, look, yeah, you don't have money. If you have credit, that's good. If you don't yet have credit, research how to build your credit up, because you're going to need good credit. You're going to need people to co-sign for you. You're going to need investors. You're going to have to know how to treat investors. You're going to need all of these things. You can't just do it by yourself like in a vacuum.
Like you said before, real estate is a people business, and I think some people mistakenly think that there's a pattern that you do without conversation and without those relationships, and there's not.
It's absolutely a people business, and we just talked about needing investors. You want to know what you have to do with investors, George? You have to treat them right all the time, 100% of the time. You always have to treat the money right. So when I say the money, I mean the people who are investing with you. And you're going to need investors. Unless you wake up one day and you have a few $1 million sitting there that you didn't 24 hours ago for some reason, you need investors. You have to preserve and build those relationships and treat them like gold, because they're going to be with you the rest of your life if you do. And if you don't treat them like gold, they're not going to be with you for 5 more seconds. What do I mean by that? Lots of communication, lots of transparency, lots of emails, lots of phone calls, lots of gifts and little notes and cards. We've talked about how to build and develop relationships, so deploy that stuff here with your investors. Keep in touch with them, send them things, know when their birthdays and anniversaries are. Be involved with their lives and build the relationship. If they have needs, service their needs. They're going to need reporting. They're going to need K-1s for their accountant. Don't be late with that shit. Don't be slow with that stuff. Be on top of it. You know it's coming. You know the K-1s are needed. You know tax time is here. Start at January 1st. The sooner you get K-1s out to investors, they're going to notice it. The more they're going to love you and stay with you. No investor, I don't care who it is or where they are or what amount they've invested with you, no investor likes to have to chase you down for a K-1 or wait for a K-1. Get your K-1s out soon. Communicate a week or two before they're coming. Hey, just wanted to let you know K-1s are coming. That way there's not radio silence for another week or two. They're going to see that email. They're like, oh yeah, Peter's on top of it. I'm going to get my K-1 soon. Your investors are going to need things with estate planning. They're going to want to transfer membership interests in your deal out of their name individually and into a trust or LLC that they've set up for their kid. Someone's going to have passed away and they're going to want to transfer interest out of their name and into another entity with the family members. You're going to have to corral signatures and you're going to have to organize it and get it all together. That's your job with the investor relations hat on that you're wearing at that point. Make sure you do it and take care of it quickly and swiftly. Communicate professionally and succinctly with them. And that's what they need. People, when they invest with you, they want a return on their money, but they want an easy, simple, brainless, painless process. If everything is a heavy lift, if everything is a pain in the ass, if everything is just not enjoyable and they dread calling you to ask for a K-1, you know what else they're going to dread doing? Writing you a check the next time you call them for money.
Yeah, treat the money right.
Treat the money right, always.
Did something early on kind of teach that to you, or was that something
my older brother, who I reference a lot, not by name, but he knows who he is, and those of you that know me watching know who he is. My older brother said to me at a young age, when he was getting into, he's 8 years older than me, so when he was getting into business, he's in a similar business that I am, but in commercial assets, and when he was starting to get into business, I was younger, I didn't know shit. He'd say, Peter, you always got to treat the money right. I was like, what? It's like, you got to treat the money right. They're your investors, you got to fight for them. You pound the table for them. You got to protect them. I was like, wow, yeah, I get that. Without investors, there's no deal. Without a deal, there's no investors. So we all need each other. And I take very seriously the opportunities that present themselves every day to me to treat my investors right. And I fight for them and I protect them. And the investors that I have been with me for 30 years. And on a recurring basis, that's a real pleasure for me. I have great relationships with all my investors and partners. They know that I'll run through walls and take bullets for them, and I know that they're going to write checks for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to ask this later on, but this actually ties into kind of this early part of your career. You had mentioned on your first apartment building deal how you soon realized that was too small for you.
It was 6 units.
Yeah. How do you know that it was too small?
Look, with 6 units, if you own 100% of a 6-unit building, in the markets that we're in here in the Northeast Corridor, you're going to make $1,800, $2,000 a month in positive cash flow. Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
With 12 units, you're going to make maybe $3,500 to $6,000 a month in cash flow. With 24 units, you're going to make like $8,000, $9,000 to maybe $15,000 a month in cash flow if you own 100% of that 24-unit building. So when I had 6 units and I was making $1,800 a month, it was great. I was 21, it was the most money I'd ever made doing anything. Right. But I quickly realized a couple of things. It was too small because I didn't want to make $1,800 a month. I wanted to make $180,000 a month. And so the way to do that is either own 100 6-unit buildings, which seemed like a really daunting task, or slice and dice that math a little bit. You can own 50 12-unit buildings, or you can own 25 24-unit buildings. So I started to build my business and started to do more deals. Now, I didn't go from 6 units to 24 to 100 units in a week. That didn't happen. But mentally, I had the mindset, and I knew that it was too small because I didn't want to manage all of that work and all of that effort and the 6 units and nothing else for the $1,800 a month. At some point, it just becomes a long walk for a ham sandwich. My ham sandwich might be a different size and value than your ham sandwich. For me, I wanted to move on to making $180,000 a month, not $1,800 a month. So I plotted in my head very quickly a path that would get me from 6 units to 24 to 100 units and so on and so forth until I am where I am now. 30 years later, it's a much different story. I love 6-unit buildings, believe me, but it's something that I can't do because my radar is focused on larger projects that are more appropriate for the size of my organization, for the size of my financial capabilities, my check writing capabilities, and that of my partners and investors, right? I know what they can put up and pay. I know what I can put up and pay. If I can't afford the building myself, I go to my partners. I know who can write me a check and for how much. And I'm really letting the capital stack that I have access to dictate the transaction size that I'm going after. Back when I was 21, no capital stack, no financial wherewithal, no credit. I needed a co-signer. 6 units was probably even bigger than I imagined that I could do. I thought maybe I'd get like a duplex or I don't know, or maybe a single family and rent out bedrooms. Today we call that house hacking. Everyone's doing it. It's great stuff. But I knew that I didn't want it to stop right there, right? If it worked for a 6-unit building, it's going to work for a 60-unit building. It's going to work for a 600-unit portfolio. It's going to work for a 6,000-unit portfolio. How are you going to get there? So I was starting to create that mindset and chart that path at a young age. I knew it was going to be too small for me. I knew that to get to 600 or 6,000 units, I needed larger transaction sizes, more units under management, UAM. Units under management is a key metric in our business. So a big driver of profitability in multifamily operations is units under management, because the more units you have under one roof, the more profitable on a per square foot basis and a percentage basis and a per unit basis your business is going to be in that one building. By far, my most profitable buildings on a per unit basis and a per square foot basis are always my larger unit buildings. And the tougher ones are the smaller unit buildings, because a $20,000 boiler in a 10-unit building or a 20-unit building costs the same as a $20,000 boiler in a 40 or 50-unit building. And a boiler's a boiler. Once you get to a certain size, the boilers cost the same. So I'd rather be putting that boiler into a 50-unit building where I can allocate, amortize, and spread out the cost of that $20,000 boiler over more units. A roof is a roof, right? Now, you're going to say to me, well, Peter, roofs are costed out and priced based on how many square feet they are. That's true. But if I've got a 15,000 square foot roof, I can cover 15 units, or I can cover 30 units, or I can cover 45 units. A lot of that depends if it's a 2-story building, a 1-story garden style low-rise layout, if it's a 3-story walk-up, right? So I knew that 6 units was just too small to have any real economies of scale. I mean, I saw these huge developments, these huge complexes with 200, 300, 400 units in these communities that were built. It was so attractive to me. And I knew that I had to get there one day if I wanted to make real money and control more revenue, and the units under management metric was going to be the measurement tool that I was going to need.
Yeah, you're kind of saying that the centralization and the standardization of a larger unit complex is actually maybe not easier, that might not be the right word, but more manageable to some extent.
I think it's more Look, it's the same amount of work to run 6 units as it is to run 12. Yeah. It's the same amount of work to run 12 units as 50, and so on and so forth. And just scale and expand that mindset. It's the same amount of work. You'll hear people in asset management and also on the transactional side of this business talk about how they only want to go for assets that are $200 million, $150 million, $300 million, because, hey, Peter, it's the same amount of time, effort, legal work, contract review, title review. All of that's the same when I'm going for a 450 unit complex that costs $400 million as it is for a 40 unit building. You know what? They're not wrong. A lot of that work is the same, and your transactional costs and your closing costs on a percentage basis are much higher on smaller deals, much lower on larger deals. So that same thinking applies to day in and day out management of the asset once you already own it. I mean, I've got an office of 6 people. We have 6,000 units under management. If I add another 1,000 units, I really don't have to add that much more headcount, if any, at all. So I'd much rather have 7,000 units under management with the same headcount than 6,000 units under management with the same headcount, right? I'm getting another 1,000 of revenue and fee contribution and economies of scale and metrics and all that power and strength behind me for now 7,000 units.
Well, speaking of working hard, you have a quote that I love.
What's that?
It's sometimes you have to do what you hate, but you have to do it like you love it.
Yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit about that? What do you mean by that?
Well, look, I love the process. I love what I do. I love waking up every day and showing up to work and fighting the fight and getting it done. I love it because I know the end game. I know what the result's going to be. I'm building something. I'm working with people that I respect and trust, and that's very enjoyable to me. I love every aspect of the business, almost, right? But different aspects I like more than others, right? I don't love getting yelled at by angry tenants and whatever, but it's a part of the gig. It comes with the territory, right? It's a cost of doing business, almost. I don't love reading lengthy legal documents, but I do it. And the reason I do it is it has to be done. And so if it has to be done and it's on my shoulders to do it, I'm going to do it like I love it, because I'm not going to have a shitty mindset about it. I'm not going to be negative about it. If I can't wait to put it down and if I can't wait to get it over with and I have a poor attitude about it, I'm not going to do a good job. I want to do a good job. In order to do a good job, you have to have the right mindset. You have to be positive. And sure, would I rather be on a beach sipping a margarita, looking at my phone, trying to transact or do deals or talk with my office on a beach somewhere? Yeah, that sounds nice and romantic and sexy, but that's not what it is all the time at all. But the stuff that I don't love, I do it like I love it. Because when I show up, I'm not going to communicate to you or anybody else in the room that I'm not into it. When I show up, I'm not going to give off the impression that I'd rather be somewhere else. I'm here. I am where my feet are. So when I show up, you're going to know it. We're going to be working on something together. I'm going to be in your face. We're going to be communicating. We're going to get it done.
Yeah. I am where my feet are. I take that.
Well, look, what I mean by that is like people show up. They're like, oh, yeah, hi. They're not looking at you. They're looking at their phone. They're, I have a call. They're like texting and talking to you at the same time, looking up and down. It's bullshit.
No, absolutely.
And all that does is communicate to me, if you're doing that with me, that you're not where you are. If you're here with me, be here with me. If you want to be dealing with, and look, I'm guilty of it sometimes. I'm not saying I'm perfect. But what I'm talking about is the connection of that to doing what you don't love so much, but doing it like you love it. Yeah. And, sometimes you got to do it like you love it. I don't love working out at the gym so much like I used to when I was younger, but I do it. And when I do it, I gotta be into it, because that's the only way I'm going to get a result. And I'd rather spend my time being happy and excited and positive anyway. What am I going to do? Be a Debbie Downer and go through the various tasks of my day that burden me or bum me out and be like, oh, this sucks. I'm not going to. That's not me. That's not who I am. I know a lot of successful people that are like that. They put their nose down, they get it done, they move on. Man, it's part of the gig. It's part of the journey. All that stuff. It's not champagne, ice cream, and titties all the time. Look, it's got to get done. You want to get through it successfully, thoroughly. You want to do a job correctly. You know how I feel about that. I can only do a job one way, and that's the right way. So whether it's shoveling shit or whatever else I do, if I'm shoveling shit, I'm going to be the happiest shit shoveler you've ever seen, because it'll end at some point. I'll get the pile shoveled, and I'll move on. And I'll be stronger, better, smarter, faster because of it. People do a lot of complaining. They do a lot of imagining hypothetically what their workday should be, what they want it to be. I love what I do. I just don't pretend that every minute of every day, 100% of the time, is just this amazing shower of honey and rainbows. Yeah.
All right, well then, I do have some Zest Quests. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we move on to Zest Quests?
I'm thinking about something that came up a couple of weeks ago. So last week we spoke about value add and things to do to different properties to add value. So you'll recall that one of the things I said was landscape installations. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that I'm reminded of today is connected to that. So when we do landscape installations, I will spend the money and dig a well into the ground and pull non-potable water up from the ground and distribute it through my irrigation lines, as opposed to connecting the irrigation line to the hose bib on the outside of the building and pulling potable water through the water meter and irrigating my grass and my landscaping with potable water. So the reason is pulling all that water through the water meter to irrigate grass, thousands and thousands of dollars. And in my markets here where I am in New Jersey, when water flows through the water meter, your sewer bill also goes up in kind. So your sewer bill is based on water usage, and they check the meters. Having green grass is important, especially if you did the value add project and spent the money in the first place to install this new landscaping. But what are you going to do? Spend a gajillion dollars irrigating it? I spend the $3,500 and dig a well. We go down 100, 200, 300 feet, whatever we have to do, and we pull up non-potable water from the ground, and we'll irrigate that way. Here's what you got to look out for. Number one, you're pulling up non-potable water, so it's got stuff in it. Make sure that your irrigation system is not spewing dirty water all over your building, because what you'll find is that you've got a beautiful building, you've just redone the exterior, you've got all this new landscaping in, maybe you've poured new 4,500 PSI concrete for sidewalks, and now you're spewing dirty iron content water all over this stuff, and it's going to stain it brown or orange, and it's just going to shit up the whole property that you just spent all this money on to make beautiful. Seems counterintuitive, but I promise you, if you don't watch that, that's what you're going to do. You're going to make your whole brand new property look really ugly and brown and dingy, because there's going to be iron stains from the water all over the sidewalks, all over the building from the waist down. You're not going to want that. So you either got to put a filter in and filter out the iron before it comes out of your irrigation heads, or you have to point your irrigation heads in such locations and places and trajectories so that it doesn't hit your sidewalks and it doesn't hit your buildings. So I had to learn the hard way. When I first started putting in landscaping and irrigation systems years ago, I was like, oh, we'll just connect that to the building. There's the hose bib right there. The superintendent, connects the hose, and that'll be where we connect the sprinkler system. And a month or two later, I get these bills for just $1 billion. I'm like, oh man, well, that was a mistake. So that evolved into digging wells. Then I dig wells and I pull water out of the ground. I'm like, I'm so smart. I just problem solved my way out of that. And then 2 weeks later, my brand new sidewalks, my parking lot, my building, I have tenants' cars. I'm spewing iron-rich water onto tenants' cars. I'm getting emails and calls from tenants that I got to pay them for detailing and car washes and special solvents to remove. I fucked up again, right? So, and I fixed that. I put filters in, but it's the evolution. I didn't really know, and I didn't really have anyone telling me this. So I hope that you guys listen to this and it helps you, because I had no one to share this information with me, and I had to really trial and error my way up the ladder to a point where I now have beautiful landscaping and I'm not shitting up my buildings and sidewalks and parking lots and cars and other property.
Yeah, all right. Keep your ear out, people. That's great. All right, so Zest Quest number one?
Zest Quest number one.
What do you have to remind yourself of or need to be reminded of consistently?
I'd say the first thing that pops into my head is that I don't need to eat as much as I'm eating. There's this calorie-restricted, vegan, fast-mimicking diet thing that I do occasionally, and it's a really cool program, and the science behind it is very interesting. And it's really that. It's teaching us that we don't need as much as we think we need. We're taught that we need 200 calories a day, or whatever your metabolic rate number is. But this fast mimicking program is science-based, and it teaches us that we don't need 2,200 calories a day. We can exist on 1,200 calories a day and be healthy and get nutrients. And not only that, when you don't have as much as you think you need, it clears out your cells, it clears your mind. Your body's not spending all of this energy on processing and digesting and delivering nutrients to the body where it needs it.
I follow this Dr. Peter Attia, who's very big in social world, and he does periodic fasts, throughout the year. I think he does at least a few a quarter, and but he'll always have people, like his fans, do it with him and experience it with him. So,
what's his name?
Peter Attia.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he's legit. Check him out. He's a good
All
guy.
right.
And then last question for today. It's actually a three-parter. What's one thing you admire about yourself? What's one thing you admire about someone else that you want to be like? And then what's one thing you admire about someone else that you don't want to be like? That's nice for them, but I don't need to be like that.
I admire a lot about myself. I'm not trying to be cute, but I've worked hard enough, long enough that I know what I have and what I'm good at and what I've built and what I've cultivated over my entire life. So I love my work ethic. No one will ever outwork me. My ability to dive in and jump in, I think that's a big one for me. People will say sometimes you just got to jump in. I mean, I jump in all the time. I have very little reservations about doing new things or scary things, pushing limits. And I like that about me because I think I've identified that as something that's helped me get to where I am today. I've heard Will Smith say that God put the best things in life on the other side of your greatest fears. So, and I believe that. I believe that fear is a big limiting factor for all of us as a species. And the best stuff is on the other side of fear. So I try to have a no fear attitude with a lot. And I like that about myself. Number two, I really admire people at the peak of their craft, skill, artistry, or game. I love professional athletes. I love watching the extreme athletes. I mean, I think they're magicians and acrobats. I love watching boxers and MMA fighters. It's amazing physically and mentally the level that these people can operate on. I admire that. I mean, the tenacity, the discipline, the consistency to be at that level. And not as a boxer and an MMA fighter. Yes, those are two good examples, but even the best of anybody at anything in the world. Like, I really love looking at the best, people who were the number one.
I know you don't watch Netflix much, but have you watched Last Dance yet?
No.
Oh man, it's the
I mean, yet I haven't.
Well, no, it's about Michael Jordan and the last season with Phil Jackson and the kind of the dream team, and it reminds me of what you're talking about.
I saw a Michael Jordan quote today.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan is quoted as saying, "I've never lost a game. I just ran out of time."
There you go.
Fuck, right?
Yeah.
Right? They lost the game, but he's like, "I never lost the game. If I had another minute, I would have won."
Yeah, I think the thing that is
confidence there.
Well, I think that that's the thing that really I took away from watching this thing on Michael Jordan was everyone thinks of him as just the most talented, but really what you see here is that he worked harder than everyone else. In addition to the tremendous talent that he had. Yeah. But I think people use other people's talents as an excuse to not try so hard at times, and that shows, you got to work hard.
And the mindset too, man, he had such a mindset, he has such a mindset. Incredible.
So last one is one thing you admire about someone else, but you don't need to be like that. That's nice for them, but...
So we've talked about Grant Cardone here. So Grant is the category killer in real estate syndications and making real estate investing available to both accredited and non-accredited investors. I mean, he's great. He's a great marketer. His marketing skills, he's the number one guy at marketing in my business, right? So it's like art in motion watching him do that. But I don't love his messaging and how he does it. I mean, he's the guy that's like fanning out bills and he's like on my boat, on my jet, and I don't love that. It's good for him, but not how I roll. And but he's very talented and he's very smart.
You know how I feel about Grant. He's so smart. I've learned a lot, but he pisses me off sometimes.
Why does he piss you off?
For the same reason. Just the swag, the ego, it's just...
But look, that works for part of the market.
Absolutely.
It's not who I am, so I would be faking it if I tried to be that way.
Yeah.
It's just, you're dealing with investors like we talked about earlier. You have to treat the money right. I find that investors aren't looking for that. They're not looking for the fanning of the bills and the jets and the glasses and the big dance parties at Vegas clubs. And it's just not important. What's important to people is, look, I'm going to put my money with you. I'm going to invest with you. you got to make me money, and you got to do the right thing, and you got to be easy to work with, and like that's what investors want. And so at least that's what my investors want, and I believe that anybody who's a real accredited investor is in that category of person as well. You know, maybe the non-accredited investor public is entertained by and enamored by the Cardone jet, boat, yacht, you know, marketing thing.
Which is, I think, why it works for him.
Yeah, and God bless him. And, you know, not how I roll, so good on him.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks so much, Peter. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, George.
See you next week.
Yeah, dig wells.
If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to The Daily Cash Flow on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'd love it if you left us a review. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at SiegelCap and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.